Y boom, boom, ahí estamos grabando FEN Talks. Grabando today, I am here with a special person, someone who has been an inspiration in a project that I'm not going to mention by name, but it is something that I'm working on. I've already got a little bit of research done on it. Aside from working on books, be it nonfiction, he's also a fiction writer. He has done some novels. He has done reviews for a variety of magazines and zines. He also has his own bands. I'm accompanied by Michael T. Fournier, or Mike Fournier. How you doing?
Hey, good man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm doing good. These past few days, it was a little bit colder, but today's a little hotter here in Puerto Rico, but we're doing good. How about up there in New England? How's it going?
It is I'm on Cape Cod and it's windy.
Mm.
There's a wildfire warning right now.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's really dry up here right now. So it's which doesn't usually happen, especially to us because like Cape Cod is just like sticking out in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
It's always damp, it's always humid. So it's a weird time
Yeah.
for many.
I bet. I bet. But some people deny climate change.
Indeed.
So
Yep.
so Mike, before we go deep into the conversation, where can people find your work? Where can they contact you for anything?
Oh man, I got so many addresses. I'm on Instagram. I think that's the most reliable place nowadays. I'm xfournierx, michaeltfournier.org. I do Policymaker, which is a monthly one-page zine, and I do Policymaker Radio Hour. So I have an Instagram account for that. That's Policymaker Cape Cod. My band is Plaza Cape Cod on Instagram. Me and my wife and our friend Vanessa run a nonprofit show booking place called Outer Frequencies. That's Outer Frequencies on Instagram. So like, I think if you find X Fournier X, then you can just find all the tendrils based on that.
Perfect. Perfect. Just follow the link tree on the Instagram.
Yep.
Um, so Mike, since you're basically a Renaissance man to some extent, you write uh nonfiction and fiction, you have your own bands. So did you always knew that you were gonna be all of these things, or were you just a fan first, like many people do?
I started writing when I was like 17 or something like that. And that's the thing that I've been compelled to do the most. I'm not always compelled to sit down and play scales on my bass. That's something that I know I should do and I try to do. But like I'm compelled to write. And I think that uh, punk rock sort of taught me that I could do it, because like uh kind of in the same way, like, when you see a band like, and this is an old analogy, but like when you see like Led Zeppelin or somebody like that on stage, Guns N' Roses, you don't think that that's you.
Mm,
I was never able to see myself in that, but I was able to see myself in the Sex Pistols or the Minutemen or something like that. So applying that sort of ethos to writing made sense for me. And I think, especially with the writer Douglas Copeland, he wrote that book Generation X, which I read when I was 17. Um, and I didn't really consider any other future prior to that, except for like House in the Suburbs, 2.5 kids, two cars in the driveway. So like reading Douglas Copeland and getting into punk made me think that I could write. And I was always hanging around musicians
mm.
once I started going to college because they were the first creative people that I met. Um, so it's naturally I started playing music, but it took me a while. Like I didn't start playing drums till I was 35. I didn't start playing bass until I was like 45 or thereabouts. I'm 50 now. So that's like I picked up that stuff later.
Damn. And I'm still here kicking myself because I haven't learned an instrument yet, and I'm 33.
Hey man, you
So
got time.
yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. So I connect with you a lot with specifically that statement about punk rock showing you that, hey, you can do stuff, even though it might seem a little bit grand when you compare yourself to other musicians or other artists or whatever. Like, for example, my first love in terms of art was video games,
Oh yeah.
but I was terrible at math. So I put that to the side. But I started writing because video games start with stories, some of them at least, or at least you can create character backgrounds and stuff like that. So I started through there. And writing is basically the most punk rock thing you can do in terms of like it's easily accessible, like anybody can do it.
Mhm.
So that was in part what inspired me. But later on, seeing punk rockers, hardcore people doing their own thing, like it grounded things a little even more.
Yep.
So um, when you were 17 and you started writing,
Hmm.
were you an avid reader as well? Or was
Oh,
it
hell
just
yeah.
that book? And was it, I don't know, like for me, the thing that got me hooked into reading was reading lyrics from albums. So what was
Oh,
the thing
yeah.
that got you into reading?
I grew up in a house with parents who just like consume books carnivorously. Like my dad is like a big sci-fi guy. My mom reads a lot of like historical fiction and romance novels and stuff. So like there were just always books in the house. My parents were always like really supportive of whatever endeavors I've taken up. Um, Definitely like every 2 weeks I would go to the library starting when I was
Mm.
10, just like chewing through books. Um, yeah, and I continue to do that now. I think there's one thing, there's like one direct connection. When I was like 14 or 15, I started skating. I lived in New Hampshire with my parents. I don't have any siblings, so I was like skating by myself, and I was reading all these skateboard magazines. And Joe Johnson was a pro for Vision at the time, and he put out this list of like, here's all the books I'm reading, here's all the records that I'm
Mm.
listening to. And then Tony Hawk did the same thing, right, in Trans World Skateboarding. So I just like went to the library like with a list, and I was like, can you help me find like Kurt Vonnegut, Herman
Yeah,
Hesse, like all these authors like that? And then I started trying to find all those bands too.
that's awesome. That's something that I'm actually doing like right now. Like I was doing it yesterday. Um, I saw this magazine that put out an article about Henry Rollins' top 20 albums, and I was like, I gotta devour those 20 albums. So I'm
Mhm.
always like constantly, I think every artist or every writer or every person who's interested in being just a fan of something does it, but they go deep into the rabbit hole of trying to find out whatever it is that person is consuming, they go right to it. I call it I get the family tree of inspiration to some extent. So
Yeah,
anytime I see an Ian Mackay interview and he does some recommendations, I look that up. Or anytime I see a Nardwuar interview and he brings up albums from the artist's past, I try to check those out as well. Um,
yeah, totally, totally.
yeah, I guess it's like I've never been a DJ, but like the DJ inside of me, like I want to find out the background of every single thing. And I guess that's also the history person in me because my dad was a history teacher.
Yeah.
So he's always into that. So I got a bunch of lists, a lot of to be read, a lot of to be listened to, a lot of to be watched, but it never ends. So while reading Double Nickels, you
Uh-huh.
constantly mentioned that it is your favorite album. Has that changed in the almost 20 years after that?
Can you believe it's been almost 20 years since I wrote that thing?
Yeah.
um, no, it hasn't changed. Actually, the book came out on April 1st, 2007, which is like my 33 and a third birthday, right?
Oh,
Just like the numbers lined up like that.
yeah.
And that is D Boone's birthday as well,
Mm.
right? So I love like I'm not a like astrology or numerology person, but
Yeah.
like it's pretty tight that happened.
Yeah.
Uh, Now that record is still perfect. Like that, it's like there's always stuff in there that rewards me, especially now that I play bass.
Mm.
Um, when I was playing drums more, I was just listening and I was shaking my head like George. Like George is total beast, and
Yeah.
obviously Watt is too. So I always hear new stuff, whether it's lyrically or musically in that record. Just amazing album.
Yeah. Yeah. I've the first time I listened to it, because again, I was doing homework for as a punk rock or hardcore fan,
Mhm.
and I was like, huh, this has been sold to me as a hardcore album, but I don't hear a lot of hardcore in it or traditional hardcore. But then upon reading your book, I re-listened to it quite a few times, especially when I'm power walking for an hour and a half. So it's perfect within the 10 minutes. So I listened to it like two, three, four times during a weekend at my parents' house. And I was like, damn, it clicked. This weird mix of punk with elements of flamenco, with elements of hardcore, with elements of even country music. Like it's a wild, eclectic mix of sounds with a wild and eclectic mix of lyrics. And it inspired me to do some projects that I'm currently doing as well. So my favorite song, if I were to choose one, is History Part 2. I think
Oh
it's called.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my
tearjerker. Yeah.
yeah. Like it brings me to my time in college while I was getting deep into the underground Puerto Rican music scene. Because
Mhm.
that's when I started. I started as a teenager, taking pictures at shows and whatever, but it wasn't until college where I started writing and going to shows often and stuff like that. So today, is that your favorite song? Has it changed?
Oh man. Uh like, hey man, which of your kids is your favorite? It's like um I guess that song is wonderful. That song is fantastic. Trying to think of what other ones pop up. Vietnam is awesome,
Mhm. Yeah.
that one like that one is fantastic. When me and my wife got married, Rebecca decided that she was going to walk down the aisle to Cohesion, which
Ooh,
is the first side. It's that flamenco guitar
yeah.
that you were talking about. So there's a lot. Like you can name any song, and I can just be like, "Oh, it's this one." Like that song is so great.
Yeah.
So it's there's a non-answer for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, this album, because I'm just surprised as to how they made it work.
Mm,
Like, if it was another person, like all of these sounds, they probably wouldn't make sense. And the fact that they did it drawing straws, like it's crazy to me to understand it, but it's awesome. And that's
it
part
is.
of what inspired me to do my own thing. So, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, and I think while recording, um, I'm trying to do a book, starting off with one book, but the potential is there for a series. So, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, I started writing about the Puerto Rican music scene
Mhm.
in like 2018, I believe it was. Yeah, after Hurricane Maria. There was a big boom of many artists just putting their work out there. It was already happening, but it wasn't until Hurricane Maria that it exploded, and it's still going on today, even after COVID, even after everything. And I have a big playlist of albums that I want to do exactly this type of treatment, like
Mm.
break them all down into documentary style albums, documentary style books, which when I read these books, I have this one and two other more, the one about Fugazi and NWK.
Oh yeah.
When I read them, I think of them as documentaries, but also as extensions of the booklets that would come up with CDs and LPs. So, what would be some tips, some tricks, some recommendations that you would give somebody who's trying to do research on something that is not so covered? Because at least in my case, I'm the one creating the bibliography in the process. Because all of these bands, all these albums, they've have not been given the opportunity to have a spotlight in the mainstream.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Like with the Minutemen, the reason I wrote that book specifically is because Our Band Could Be Your Life came out, right? And Michael Lazarow did a fantastic job with that. And then We Jam Econo came out as well, the documentary. Neither of those books really focused on any of the songs, right?
Mm,
Like aside from maybe History Lesson Part Two, there wasn't a lot of discussion about the music because the story of the band, the story of D Boon and Mike Watt growing up together and pulling in George, was so overwhelming that like the music sort of got pushed aside. And you know, I'm not old enough to have seen the band. Like
mm,
D Boon died in 1985 when I was 12, right?
mm.
So like, you know, I didn't get to see them digging around, I guess, right? So with like, do you think that Hurricane Maria is like that's like the sort of ground zero of this new wave of Puerto Rican bands forming and playing?
Uh, I don't think it is the like they were already playing,
Mhm.
but after Hurricane Maria, like there was such an anger, such a intensity, could be the best word to use. But you know, it was certainly a pivotal point. I could use that as like a you know as a background type of thing to use. So
Yeah, that's a really compelling thesis statement, right?
mhm,
Because like
mhm,
I always know when it's 33 and a third season because I get like between 1 and 10 random emails asking for advice,
mhm,
which is cool, like because I asked David Barker, who is the series editor, for advice before I pitched. right? So I'm happy to return the favor to whoever. But I think a lot of aspiring 33 and a third writers or music writers aren't always providing a reason why they're doing what they do. Like it doesn't get very much beyond like, oh, this music is really important to me, or this
Mm,
music moves me, or something like that. Anyone who wants to write about music is going to say those things about whatever their favorite album is, whether it's like Morrissey or Stiff Little Fingers or Wu-Tang Clan.
mm,
Like you have to get beyond that. And I think that in your case, like having like a socioeconomic anchor
mm.
and a natural disaster like that really is a really good framing device. Um, do the bands that you want to write about, like, have they been covered in the past?
Uh, I've covered them. That's the thing.
You've covered them. Okay.
Yeah, I've covered them either through interviews or reviews that I've written for them on my own, like that type of thing. But they've never received any mainstream attention whatsoever outside of the scene, you know?
Cool. Like,
Yeah.
so if you're doing all the primary research, if you've talked to all the players, that's awesome.
Mm,
From there, it's determining what your format's going to be, whether it's going to be oral history or whether it's going to be like more traditional history. I think
mm,
um, oral history can be cool or it can be frustrating because sometimes the speakers contradict each other,
yeah,
which is good, right? Like having multiple viewpoints can be good or bad depending on how you look at it.
yeah, yeah. Right now, the first one that I'm working on, it's a good thing that it's just one person who did the entire album, but it's also kind of a bad thing because it can end up sort of ending up like a fluff piece, and I'm not trying to make a fluff piece. I'm trying to tell the entire story.
Mhm.
So taking into consideration, it was in part impacted by Maria, but it
Yep.
was also made through diaspora because the musician, he did the album while living in the UK. So
Oh
it's an
wow.
interesting dynamic of being a Puerto
Yeah.
Rican living in the UK. So
Right.
that can also be a interesting thing to explore.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, totally. Like I don't like of course it makes sense that like that the British punk culture would rub off
hmm,
on this guy who made this record. So
yeah,
that's a really interesting angle. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, as far as oral history, like any suggestions aside from interviews, stuff like that?
With the Minuteman book and with other projects I've worked on, just like the first step always is to just like consume all of the existing press,
Mm,
um like there are so many interviews that you watch like with Henry or with Ian or any of those guys, like those sort of legacy guys, where the first couple, like the first four or five questions, if like if you're a nerd like you are and like I am, and watch all those things, you're like, oh, come on, like they talked about this in episode 27, it turned out a punk or something like that.
mm,
So trying to find the new stuff and being familiar with the stuff that's already existent, I think, is really important first. If you're like breaking new ground like that, like then I guess maybe you would have to do multiple interviews if there's stuff that you
mm.
missed or realized later.
Yeah, 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 definitely. That's something I gotta do. The most difficult part for me, at least, is transcribing it all. Um, having an 9 to 5 as a teacher and having the extra time to transcribe, it's, for lack of a better word, a bitch, but gotta do it.
Yeah.
Gotta
Do
do it.
you use like do you know about Otter? Have you heard about that before?
I have not.
Okay. Otter is a like I don't have a lot to say that's positive about AI, right? Like
Yeah.
but Otter is a AI transcription
Mm,
program, right? And
mm,
it's like I think it's $50 a year. And it does a lot of the grunt work for you. Like it's really slow, right? It like like in Razorcake, I interviewed Al Baril from SSD Control,
mm,
right? And so like by the 10th time we mentioned the name of the singer of SSD Control, then AI started to realize that Springer was the guy's name. Before that
mm.
it was Springer or it just wouldn't get it correct or something like that. You still have to go through and listen to it, but you don't have
Yeah.
to chip out everything, right? You can just like it gets like 80% of it, and then the other 20% you have to go and fix. So that like that makes transcription a lot easier for me when I do interviews.
Yeah. Totally. That is, now that we're talking about AI, I think I used it when I did my thesis back in the day in terms of that. Like I had a 3 hour interview to transcribe and I was like, this is gonna kill me and it's gonna take me way more time than I had imagined. So I think I did something similar to that where I put on the 3 hour recording and the machine did its thing and I just had to re-listen to all of it in order to make it in order to, get everything right. So yeah, I totally forgotten about that. But that's one of the good ways to use AI. Don't use it for everybody who's watching and listening to this. Don't use it to create original art. Make it so it can help you organize shit. Um,
Don't use it to, write papers for your class because the
Definitely.
instructor is going to totally see through
Yeah,
that when you sound like a grad student.
yeah. That's that's my everyday life now. Like I'm trying to get students to actually write essays, second language learners, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
become, yeah. So they have, I don't know, basic level English, but they're writing in advanced level English. So something is not working out. Um, okay, so aside from this, I know you've written a lot of reviews
Mhm.
for multiple magazines, be it physical or online,
Yep.
including zines. So
Yep.
did you do did all of that serve as practice before you focused on this? Or was this your first time writing as a music journalist, quote unquote, or music academic, music scholar? How did it go?
Let me think. When I moved to Boston in 1997, I started writing for The Noise. The Noise was a free monthly that would get distributed to, the Paradise and the Middle East and TT the Bears, all the clubs up in Boston. So I did that. I wrote for Jersey Beat. Actually, before that, I started writing for Jersey Beat in 1994. Um, Jim Testa still does Jersey Beat online. It was kind of like Suburban Voice was the Boston fanzine, and then Jersey Beat was the New Jersey fanzine. So like really similar in approaches. And both of those guys still do it online. Al does and Jim does. What else? I did some stuff for like the college newspaper. I went to University in New Hampshire, so I wrote some articles about like Jello Biafra. I wrote some articles about shellac, stuff like
Mm,
that. Um, and I think I did some online stuff as well. Like in 2005, I reviewed my entire record collection alphabetically, like when I was
mm,
starting to get more serious about writing. And that's when I pitched the Minutemen book. So it was like that was my first like scholarly work, I guess. Like it's on Bloomsbury, it's on an academic press. Um, I had written a couple novel drafts before that weren't super successful, and then I went to grad school, and then I got my chops, and I started writing novels that got published at that point.
mm. Regarding the record collection reviews, is that
Yep.
somewhere up online where is it all in your website or where can one find it?
No, I took that down.
Ah,
Yeah, it was good for the time, but I don't know. I think I was still sort of in the thrall of like sort of mean zines at that point. So I was like taking shots at bands and like I just try
gotcha,
and be more positive at this point. Um,
gotcha.
I don't need to do that.
Yeah. Gotcha. I ask because I want to do a project similar to that, but
Mhm.
not necessarily my record collection, but the 365 albums that in some way, shape, or form formed me as a music fan or as a person. So, for
Oh, cool.
example, I want to cover the first album that I was ever given, which is a Pokemon soundtrack. But still, it was the first album I ever had in my life, so I got to cover it.
Yep.
And then also like the first album I ever bought. So, that type of thing. So that should be a fun project. I'm trying not to repeat bands in the project or artists, but we'll see how it goes.
Yep.
And I also saw another book where the writer, I forgot his name, he covered an entire decade's worth of music in mini reviews. So I also want to do something similar to that, but with Puerto Rican music. Hopefully
Cool.
I can do it when I'm older. So you mentioned novels,
Mhm.
nonfiction, fiction. how does your mind work? How do you balance it out?
I always have a novel going, right?
Okay.
Like, yeah, like, get up in the morning, have coffee, have breakfast,
Mm,
sit at this desk and work on whatever the novel is. So I'm like 10,000 words into the fifth one.
mm,
I just started that in August. So it's like, man, first drafts of novels are like drilling through bedrock, but there's a certain part of my brain that gets engaged by doing that every day. And then sometimes I'm doing stuff for Razor Cake.
mm.
Sometimes I'm interviewing bands. Sometimes I'm doing research projects. It just depends where I'm at, I guess. But I think the fiction is the primary thing. And then there's also Policymaker, which is like the creative nonfiction. Like the one pager. This is from when Steve Albini died
Mm.
a couple months back, I guess May. So I have a mailing list and I do a one page a month to the mailing list. That's creative nonfiction. So I'm just always keeping busy, and it sort of balances itself out. Like sometimes if I'm between novel drafts or something like I was from, say, July until September, I just like take a break. Um,
I
I
was
know it'll,
gonna I was gonna ask if you had like some sort of routine because at least for me, I write every day. It's mostly poetry. I should have a lot more space for the nonfiction stuff, like reviews and stuff like that. But I don't know how to balance that part out yet. So are you more like a season writer in the sense of this season or this week is going to be for the novel per se, or do you always write for fiction and nonfiction every day, nonstop? Or
it's like the fiction is the first thing that I do in the morning.
mm,
Policymaker, I usually start in the middle of the next month once I
mm,
know what happened last month. Last month in October, me and Rebecca and Vanessa again do Outer Frequencies. We put on shows. So we had Noun here. We had Marissa from Screaming Females and Philip from KO Dot in their new band. So that's kind of like the centerpiece of the new issue. Um, and it's like the creative nonfiction stuff sort of works in tandem with the fiction writing stuff.
mm.
And then then the nighttime shift, like on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, or whatever it is, like I'm working on reviews or working on whatever the other project is based on my class load, like grading papers, doing videos, stuff like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. How do you balance it all out as well? Like, it's my understanding that you're a professor, right?
Yeah. I teach at Cape Cod Community College, and I teach at two online schools as well.
Oh, wow. So, damn. So how do you balance it all out? Workhorse.
Yeah, I mean, like I still have the energy to do this. I think a lot of it is just like getting enough sleep, drinking enough water,
Mm,
not eating shit, like not eating fried food, not
mm.
eating a lot of meat, uh, exercising, just like keeping all the levels balanced, lets me do all the things I want to do. Um, my routine's pretty rigid during the school year, and then during the summer, like my wife isn't working. She also teaches at the college. So like we get to hang out more. So I'm more, I'm more fluid during the
Mm.
summer times, I guess, and vacations. But I just try and do the same thing every day, every week, stuff like that. Depending on how I structure my classes, it can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but I've done it for long enough so I know not to put like three batches of papers on the same day, things
Mm.
like that. This semester has been really successful, like in terms of my workload not being overwhelmed. It's been really great.
Awesome. That's awesome. I think that's what's killing me right now. Like I'm struggling to balance it all out. On top of that, the groups that I'm teaching, they're pretty energetic. Like I got eighth grade and those alone are killing me. But at least 12th graders, they're cool. And ninth graders, they're also cool right now. So yeah, let's see how it all goes. So you're working on a new novel. Um, based on what I looked up in your website, it should come out this year, right? Or next year?
The third novel is coming out in December. Yeah.
Mm,
St. Rooster Books is putting out The Impasse, which is like a sort of a cold, like a 1984 Reagan era Cold War
Mm,
novel with punk in it, with role playing games in it.
mm,
These suburban kids like are playing these role playing games, listening to college radio, and then they watch this movie called The Day After, which was a made for TV movie, which was on the Sunday before Thanksgiving in 1983 when there were still three channels,
mm,
ABC, NBC, and CBS. So like a third of the country saw America get vaporized by Russian bombs.
mm,
And the next day in school, everybody was just like completely like all the color had drained out of everybody's face. Everyone looked like a ghost the next day because we all stayed up late watching bombs drop on Steve Gutenberg and John Lithgow. It was like terrifying.
yeah,
So I used that um, as one of the main points of the book, where like the kids like start developing their own role playing games, trying to create a scenario where nuclear war won't be as bad as it
mm,
was portrayed on television, and they can't get it to work. They start going to all these punk shows. They start playing in bands. So that's coming out on St. Brewster Books in December. I have another one finished, which I'm starting to pitch now, and that's called Century. That's the pandemic book.
mm.
And I don't know what the new one is called because I'm only 10,000 words into it. But it follows two characters for like 30 or 40 years.
Ooh, damn. Okay. Based on what you're thinking right now, since it has such a large timeline, would it
Mhm.
be a very extensive book or would it be a series of books?
No, I don't think it's a series. I think it's just like the first character gets like 10,000 words in 1996, and then it's
Mm,
going to cut to the next character who, gets 10,000 words in 2001 or whatever.
mm,
So it's going to sort of move incrementally like that, I
cool.
think.
Exactly. Never know. Never know what's gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have your outline, but never know what's gonna happen. So punk rock has been a thing since you were young.
Oh, yeah.
Have you grown tired of it at all? Is there any new band or any new artist that are gathering your attention? What's going on with 50-year-old Mike compared to 17 teenage Mike?
Well, I have more disposable income now, and I have more access now. So, though I did used to get punk records in the library in New Hampshire. Like we had a really good library system, so I could find punk records, I could find metal records. So
Mm,
I listened to like the Feelies and I listened to Anthrax because of the
mm,
library. When I was growing up. Um, I guess like being 50 as I am, like I'm at the age where people start to say like, "Oh, music's not good anymore," and it's like, of course it is. Like it than ever because there's less barrier to entry than there ever was before, right? Like
mm,
you can record on your laptop and you can put it out tomorrow, and thousands of people can hear it. Um, so I think music is better now than ever. It's just that my peers like sometimes like are too big, like they're busy raising kids or they're busy working a job or like whatever it is. I think that just the interest drops off, and I'm like I remain weirdly compelled to keep listening to new music as I go. I have a radio show on WOMR up here in Provincetown, so I do an hour of new music every 2 weeks. So I have no excuse, right?
mm.
I'm always on Bandcamp. Like you were talking about the family tree of inspiration. It's like, if you like this record, you might like this. So I
Yeah.
listen to all those records down below and find stuff that I like. Um, in terms of who I like now, like I mentioned that Noun was here. Like those two are fantastic. We love Sweeping Promises. We went
Mm,
to see them in Providence. Our friend Vanessa sings in a band called Samuel SC. Like they got back together after 30 years and they're putting out music that's as good, if not better, than the stuff that they were putting out back in the day. Yeah, it's like it's life is so much more fun when there's a clutch of bands that you really like and you see them every time they come around or follow them around or whatever it is. I did merch for my friend's band Egghead this summer,
yes.
so I was hanging out with Egghead and the Ergs and Boris the Sprinkler this summer selling merch in a bunch of different towns. It's fucking great, What a joy.
It is. It is. It is. It is. Especially that part about getting access to so much music. Like, at least for me, when I was growing up, I remember a specific experience where someone told me, why was I checking out the Wikipedia page of an artist and then opening up multiple tabs to check out the music of the family tree of inspiration, you know?
Yep.
And I was reflecting on that the other day and I was like, damn, I was doing that back then and I'm still doing it now. Making a bunch of playlists on Spotify or looking up bands on Bandcamp or SoundCloud. So I don't know. It's part of being a fan, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and now it's so easy, you know. I need to dedicate more time to Bandcamp because I know there's even weird music over there to find. So,
Yep.
you know, I do
Yeah.
find myself trying
Yep.
to listen to discographies of a bunch of bands from the olden days.
Yep.
So I always try to balance new stuff with the old stuff. I just see how it goes. Um, the Zoom is about to close. We got 2 more minutes. So I'm
Okay.
gonna close this session and then I'm gonna
Great.
send you another link so we can close out the interview with another few questions. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Boom, boom, boom. There we are, round two with Mike Fournier. So, Mike, we were talking about punk rock, stuff like that, how it's appeared in your own fiction
Mhm.
and how it's been in your life ever since you were a teen up till now. So, um, you mentioned earlier that you made your bands, I wouldn't say recently, but you started learning your instruments in your mid-30s.
Yep.
Now you're in bands. So, that trend, did it come before Plaza or did it come after Plaza? Let's start with that.
Uh, Dead Trend was before Plaza. And okay, so my first novel is Hidden Wheel, right? And Hidden Wheel has a band in it. Like there's a whole town and there's all these fictional bands in this fictional town, right?
Mm,
Like um, there's a math rock band and stuff like this. So Dead Trend was the hardcore band from the fictional town of Freedom Springs. And so I was writing this book, and they were sort of in the background, like one of the characters in my book used to play bass in like the reunion version of Dead Trend, right?
mm,
So I would walk around the house and I would like have these like stupid hardcore songs in my head, like nursery rhyme hardcore songs. So I thought it would be funny to try and write some of those because I know enough guitar so I can play a power chord, right? So I
mm,
wrote these like 6 or 7 stupid hardcore songs, and then I was like, oh, it'd be even funnier if I got a band together and like we started playing these. So when I was going to grad school up in Maine, me and 3 of my friends started this hardcore band. And these are guys that like never listened to hardcore before. Like they're used to sort of like um, to playing one chord for a minute instead of playing 8 chords in 1 minute.
mm,
So but they're super good sports, and I love those guys to death. I talk to them almost every day, and so we started Dead Trend. We played like probably 20 or so shows. We
mm.
played one show in New York City with Mike Watt because
Because-
Three Rooms Press, the press that put out my novels, also put out Mike Watt's book On and Off Base. So Dead
mm,
Trend got to play that show. Um, and then Plaza is my band with my wife. During the pandemic, we were stuck in the house, and so like there was a little while where she was learning to play bass and I was playing guitar. And then when she sat down on my drum set, she just like she was into it and she loved it. So I moved over to bass. So we're not a drum and bass duo, we're a bass and drum duo.
mm,
Instrumental. We've been playing out, I guess, for more than 2 years now. We played up in Maine, we played New York State, we played Baltimore, we played Cape Cod, Boston, Worcester. So it's really great that me and my wife have been married for 15 years and we still get to do new stuff together and have,
mm.
adventures together. So it's great.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Um, I gotta ask. I'm right now going. I've been married for a year and 2 months, so I'm
Congratulations. Yeah.
going there for 2 years. On the way there. So being in a band, I know there's always creative conflicts and stuff like that. So has it affected in any way you guys' relationship, or has it been for the better being in a band?
We're like, I guess I was, when we both started our instruments, I think I had an advantage over Rebecca in that, like, I did have like the rudiments of guitar
Mm,
already. Playing a bass is different, but like I had some understanding. And she was starting from zero. She was just like picking up sticks for the first time. So we've sort of learned to play together, and she started taking lessons, at which point she started getting good enough. So I was like, oh shit, I got to keep up, so that made me start taking lessons too. I can't really think of any major conflicts in terms of artistic vision or anything like
Mm.
that. We'll disagree sometimes on what a song will be called or something like that, or
Mm.
like how many times the B part repeats. But we just work through that, like we work through everything, and like there's never like huge like flare ups creatively or anything like that.
Nice, 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 nice. So it's been for the better,
Yeah,
entonces.
yeah.
Great, 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 great. Um, in terms of like influences, does she also share punk rock influences and stuff like that, or is she more into other type of music?
Yeah, Rebecca grew up in central Massachusetts, and she
Mm.
was involved with Amnesty International,
Mm.
right? So she she got a detention in high school. I think the only detention she got in high school was when some kid broke his leg stage diving at a Converge show that she helped set up for Amnesty International, right? So like I don't think that she's as big of a fan of punk stuff as I am, but she grew up with it and she's a fan of it. And we, like every week we're both listening to music and we both, bring stuff, to the table on Friday night and we listen to it. So it's like we're both really big music fans. She has a radio show, I have a radio show. So it's really great. It's really fantastic.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's one of the biggest things that my wife and I share. Like our passion for music, it's very deep. However, the sounds we share are not always there. So if we
Right.
were to ever make like a band or anything like that, I think it would have to be like a pop rock thing because she's not into hardcore or she likes hip hop, but it's more like pop rap, not hip hop like say, I don't know, MF Doom or stuff like that. So um I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of giving her like a piano because she's been into Elton John lately a lot.
Oh,
So
cool.
maybe for Christmas a synth or a piano. I don't know. Spitballing here.
Yep.
So this is a pretty bad transition, but I know you're from New England.
Yep.
So I gotta ask. I know you're big into baseball.
Yep.
So how does it feel to see the Yankees losing the World Series?
Oh man, it's great. It never gets old. Yeah, I do the baseball fanzine Zisk with my buddy Mike Falloon. I haven't mentioned that. Every year we put out a new issue, and it's funny because this is the 20-year anniversary of the Red Sox coming back from
Yeah.
3-0 against the Yankees in the American League Championship Series.
Mhm.
And this year in the World Series, the Yankees were down 3-0 to the Dodgers, right? So it was really, really great to read press, to read New York press, right? Like to read the New York Post and be like, Yankees seeking to draw inspiration from 2004 Red Sox. Like just warmed like my cold, shriveled heart, man. It was great.
I bet. I bet. Uh, it's funny because back when the comeback happened, for some weird reason, my dad, thankfully, he had HBO for us at home. So for
Yep.
some weird reason, HBO always showed the movie Just Married. And in that movie, Ashton Kutcher's character was a big Dodgers fan.
Oh,
So naturally, being a kid, I just got into the Dodgers, even though I wasn't a big baseball fan. But then when the comeback happened, I became a Red Sox fan for quite a few years. And but now seeing the Yankees lose, I mean, I know that technically being Puerto Rican, one from the island especially, you're kind of like raised into being a Yankees fan or a
mhm.
Mets fan or
Yep.
a Pirates fan because of Clemente
Yeah.
Or an Astros fan because Carlos Correa was in the team recently.
Yep.
But I don't know. I guess the punk rock kid inside of me was always went against being a Yankees fan because there's such big money type
Yeah.
of team. So I was at a crossroads this time because I love Altani, but I also hate watching the Yankees become champions again. So
Mhm.
it was kind of
One thing
weird.
I will say about the Yankees is that um, like Aaron Judge is just like such a
Yeah.
superior player and like very easy to root for, despite the fact that he's a Yankee.
Yeah.
can't say like nothing but respect for him. Stanton, Giancarlo Stanton has always been
Mm,
like this like fearsome masher, you know, like he's a really great player. Rizzo used to be on the Red Sox.
mm,
Um, I would say something nice about Garrett Cole, except like Rafael Devers just like eats his breakfast, you know, just like steals his lunch from him every time. Uh, the Yankees have a lot of likable players, you know,
yeah.
and so I was sort of mentally prepared for it, but yeah, again, warmed my heart.
uh, I also gotta ask, since New England has been, going right now, like, sure, you guys are celebrating the fact that the Yankees lost. But in terms of football, like, it's been horrible these last few years. So I gotta ask, are you also a football fan? And if so, how does it feel to watch the Patriots go down in such a hard way?
Well, I remember like the Patriots when I was growing up used to stink, you know, like
Yeah.
they went to Super Bowl 20 and the Bears, you know, with William the Refrigerator Perry and Jim McMahon just like ran over them in the Super Bowl.
Mm,
And then Brett Favre's only Super Bowl win was against the Patriots, right?
mm,
In the 90s. So like it's still like I'm still sort of used to the Patriots not being good, even though there
mm,
was that like 20-year run. Like um this year is really fun, you know, because like the expectation is that they're going to lose every game, you know. So like when they won two out of three games with Drake May so far, it's been
mm,
so much fun to watch. Like that, like the Patriots wound up losing in week 9, but there was like the touchdown with no time left on the clock to tie
mm.
it, and I was like, that's our Super Bowl this year. You know, that one pass was the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's watching that kid play, like, I don't know, there's potential there. I don't want to say like anything too outlandish, but I think there's potential there for him to become, I don't know if a Tom Brady, but at least like a mid to upper tier
Mhm.
quarterback if all goes well, and no injuries and stuff like that. Because he's shown very good flashes of being a good quarterback. And
Yeah.
shifting from one sport to the next, well, before going to basketball, I'm a huge Steelers fan since again, I got into football back when the comeback was happening. So
Yep.
I was being a Red Sox fan, but also a Steelers fan with Jerome Bettis and Big Ben and all these people playing.
Yep.
So throughout my entire life, I've been always like having this big problem that I have with my hometown basketball team, which is like they're always on the tier of being great or
Mhm.
mid tier or just straight up bad. Thankfully, um, the Steelers have never been below 500 in
Right.
my lifetime. So
Yep.
that's been fun, even though it's been hurtful sometimes. So when it comes to basketball,
Mhm.
um, I grew up a Jordans fan, as a 90s kid,
Yep.
but eventually Paul Pierce turned me into a Celtics fan.
Yeah.
So how does it feel watching the Celtics be so good recently?
It was really great. When I moved out of Boston in 2008, and that was the last championship that I got. I lived in Boston from 97 to 2008. So it was
Mm,
just like a really wonderful time to be a sports fan in Boston specifically. And like, you know, I grew up seeing the Larry Bird Celtics against the
mm,
Showtime Lakers, which was just fantastic, right? My dad took me to see like 4 or 5 of those games. Like, so I saw Larry Bird and Parrish and McHale and Danny Ainge, all those
nice.
guys. Um, it's been fun to follow the Celtics, and like they've been sort of like climbing up the mountain for a couple of years, and they were able to seal the deal this year with Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. So it's really fun. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, yeah. Did you get to hear did you get to hear any of Larry Bird's trash talking back in the day?
Oh, yeah, like at the at the All-Star game, like you know, he's doing the 3-point contest, and he walks in and he's just like, "All right, who's going to be in second place?" You know, there was one game he played where he was like, "I'm just going to shoot lefty tonight."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's
Did
the
you,
game against like they used to play one game a year or 2 games a year in Hartford instead of Boston.
mm,
I think that's where the Hawks game was in Hartford, where he got 60 points.
mm,
You know, like, and that was like 2 weeks after Kevin McHale got 57 points.
yeah.
You know, so much fun.
Yeah, I bet. Um, since we're talking about sports and you're a writer with a baseball scene, have you
Yep.
considered doing a book about baseball? Any specific player in particular that catches your eye?
Let's see. We want to we're going to do an anthology of Zisk issues. I
Mm,
came on as co-editor in 2020, and Mike and the previous editor Steve Reynolds put out Fan Interference, which was I think like the first 25 or 30 issues of Zisk. So we're going to do a new anthology. In terms of like writing a book about a personality, the guy that I would pick is Bill Lee, who is lefty for the Red Sox
mm,
in the 70s, but he already wrote a bunch of books about himself,
yeah.
So, so I don't think I'm going to get into the baseball biography game. Though with that said, I did two podcasts for Sportsland.
Mm,
Jake Brennan from Cast Iron Hike has this podcast series. So I did an episode on Pete Rose and I did an episode on Ty Cobb.
awesome. Awesome. Interesting. I don't know if I would write a book about a specific player or anything like that, but I do want to make, if I get the chance, a documentary about my hometown basketball team
Oh, cool!
because my grandfather, he played with the team in the 40s.
Wow,
So I would like to do like a 30 for 30 type of thing,
yeah.
but divided into like the decades, I guess, for the team. So that would be fun. Um, that's it. Anything like if you were to do a 33 and one third book about another album, which album do you think you would pick?
Oh man, it's funny because right after I did that one, I pitched another one, and they're like, "You only get to do one book." Everyone in the
Ah,
series can only do one book. Actually, here we go. So I wanted to do one on the last Black Flag record, "In My Head,"
mhm,
which is my favorite Black Flag record. And then a couple years ago, I got asked to do something for this 33 and a
mhm.
third, the B-sides, right? So just like overlooked records. So I wrote about Rodan from Louisville. They put out one record called Rusty. It's celebrating the 30th anniversary right now. So before he died, I talked to Jason Noble, who played in that band. I've talked to Jeff Mueller a bunch of times. So I incorporated some of that stuff into this piece on Rodan in the 33 and a third B-sides book.
Super. I don't know if I would try to send like a proposal for 33 and one third. I think I already got the album that I would like to work on, but I'm so hyper focused on doing the thing that I mentioned earlier
Yeah, yeah.
because I wanna. My main idea is to provide a spotlight to all these musicians who are usually gone by the wayside due
Mhm.
to not being mainstream. So, but yeah, it would be fun. It would be fun.
Yep.
So that being said, Mike, um, anything new you got coming on? We talk about the fiction book, but anything other than that that we should keep an eye on or our ears open to?
Let me think here. Yeah, the Impasse is coming out on St. Rooster Books in December. I've been writing for Razor Cake for 10 years, America's only nonprofit punk magazine. So I'm in there, every issue. My band Plaza with my wife Rebecca is going to do some shows in March in New England. So we're going to do that. I'm doing Policymaker Radio Hour every second and fourth Tuesday on 92.1 FM WOMR Provincetown. I have a Mixcloud page. Uh, Policymaker is my monthly one pager. I feel like I'm forgetting something. I probably am. And we do shows on Cape as Outer Frequencies. We all ages punk shows on Cape Cod. So Outer Frequencies. So yeah.
Awesome. And everything can be found in your Instagram, which is what? So people
So it's
can
xfournierx on Instagram.
perfect. So, Mike, first things first, thank you for saying
Yeah.
yes for the interview. Thank you for the advice. Thank you for the wonderful life lessons told throughout your story that I'm going to take into consideration, especially the idea that you have a band with your wife and the idea that you started playing music in your mid 30s. Like, it gives me a new perspective on life. I just put it that way. So, thank you for that. Thank you for the advice and keep going. Keep
Yeah,
going,
you
keep
keep
going.
going too. You know, it's
Mm,
like, sometimes it's easy to compare yourselves to other people and be like, oh man, like, you know, this person started this band when they were this old, this year, this many years old or whatever, like this person started this band when I was 21, like they were 21, I can't do it. Like,
mm.
fuck that, man. Like, if you have the time, if you have the energy, if you have the means, just do stuff. It's super fun. And like, there's no date stamp on it. Just do it.
Will do, will do. His name is Michael T. Fournier. You can also call him Mike. He's
Yeah.
got a bunch of projects. The Instagram will be linked in the description of this video, this podcast as well. Again, thank you, Mike.
All right. And thank you.
Yeah.